Hi, everyone. I'm Pavandeep Sandhu, the mental health therapist at Sunny Slope Elementary.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca Soto. I'm the school social worker at Rancho San Justo Middle School.
Hello, I am Veronica Gonzalez, school counselor over at Rancho San Justo Middle School.
We are all part of the HSD social emotional team, and today we are going to be going over the topic of grief. So first, I'd like to start off by going over the objectives for today. We're going to be going over definitions, stages of grief, normal physical, verbal, and emotional behaviors, worrisome behaviors, coping skills, how to support your student, and resources. I'm going to go over the definitions briefly. So grief can look like many different things for each individual. So the type of loss can really vary. The first definition is loss, and that refers to no longer having somebody or something tangible or intangible. Grief is a reaction to a loss. It's a universal response to any loss. Bereavement refers to the experience of the loss of someone through death. Mourning refers to the expression of grief in culturally specific ways. This is a nice picture of the stages of grief we're going to briefly cover. We have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And before going into each of the stages of grief, I would like to share that the stages are not linear. You can bounce back from one end to the other, from bargaining to denial to acceptance. There's no wrong or right way to do this. It's a process. So I'm going to go over denial. This is kind of saying this can't be happening. Individuals may refuse to accept the fact that a loss has occurred. Anger, why is this happening to me? So this is when an individual realizes that the loss has occurred, and they might become angry at themselves or others. Bargaining, I'll do anything to change this. And this is when an individual tries to change or delay the loss. Depression, what's the point of going on after this loss? At this stage of depression, the individuals come to recognize that a loss has occurred or will occur. And finally, acceptance. It's going to be okay. This is when the individual comes to accept their loss. They understand the situation logically, have come to terms with it emotionally, and are in the acceptance phase of grief.
Next, we're going to go ahead and talk about healing from a loss. When healing from a loss, keep in mind that each person's grief is unique and that there is a relational aspect. People have unique personalities, views, histories, expectations, preconceptions, and bring different coping mechanisms when processing grief. Accepting the loss is a starting point for the work of grieving and healing. It is important to accept the loss not only intellectually but also emotionally. But full emotional acceptance may take longer. Number 2 refers to feeling the feelings, which might be counterintuitive for some because emotions can be uncomfortable. But it is important to allow for differences in expressive styles during this time and not insist that feelings be expressed in any particular way. The next task in the healing process is adjusting and learning to live with the loss. This means being able to return to prior levels of functioning with school, friends, and home life. And then we have moving forward. This part of the healing supports the ability for students to adjust in a way that allows for personal growth. It is important to note that moving forward does not imply forgetting. Rather, it's a recognition of living life fully. Moving forward supports a vision for the future and developing a new normal given the circumstances. Healing is a process and path which may keep curving, turning, changing, and it is important to be patient. In supporting students' healing, it is important to remind ourselves and them that grief is unique. It is legitimate. Their thoughts and feelings are neither right nor wrong, they just are. It's important to honor the spirituality and beliefs of those grieving. Remind your student that they can share as much as they're comfortable doing so, and that there is no set time or limit on the grieving process.
So now we're going to move on and speak a little bit about behaviors that are commonly observed when individuals are grieving. Even children who are able to express their feelings of grief through words still at times will show signs of grief through verbal, emotional, and physical behaviors at times. Each child is unique, so each child will express their grief in their own way and in their own time. So a few common physical behaviors are changes in their eating and sleeping patterns, recurring illnesses, and aggressive behaviors. A few common verbal behaviors can include talking about or not talking about the individual who has passed or the individual who they are no longer in contact with. Students engaging attention by talking a lot, such as saying silly things or being the class clown, can also be an example of common behaviors. Another example can be stating that they wish to be with the deceased. If a student makes a statement similar to this, it is important to be careful and not jump to the conclusion that they are necessarily suicidal, but not ignore the possibility either. Keeping extra supervision around the student and checking in at all times is important when statements like this are being made. Lastly, common emotional behaviors. So those can include being tearful or crying at unexpected times, having strong feelings about seemingly small things, being upset with almost everything and everyone, forgetfulness, or even irritability. Again, these are just a few examples of the common physical, verbal, and emotional behaviors that can be observed in a grieving child. Every child is different and may grieve in different ways. However, if any of these common or normal behaviors I spoke about are observed over a long period of time or to an extreme, seeking professional help may be appropriate. So now let's go ahead and move on to worrisome behaviors to keep an eye out for. So just a few examples include violent play, being withdrawn or isolated, drop in grades, or threatening to hurt themselves or others. If your child is exhibiting any of these behaviors, seeking professional help and providing extra support may be appropriate.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a coping skill. So now that we've talked about grieving and loss and bereavement, the stages of grief, we're going to talk a little bit about what to do next. So a coping skill is an action that we take consciously or unconsciously to manage stress, problems, or uncomfortable emotions. So here are some lists of unhealthy coping strategies and healthy coping strategies. So for some examples of unhealthy coping strategies, we have drug and alcohol use, social withdrawal, self-harm, overeating. And these are just some examples. You may see different things at home or the students that you work with. Some examples of healthy coping strategies are exercise, seeking professional help, relaxation techniques, humor, spirituality.
So we're going to go ahead now and provide some examples of some healthy coping strategies. So to start off, we're going to do mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? It is a state of non-judgmental awareness of what is happening in the present moment, including the awareness of one's own thoughts, feelings, and senses. A few of the many benefits of mindfulness can include reduced symptoms of depression and anxiety, improved ability to adapt to stressful situations, and the ability to manage emotions. One example of mindfulness can be making a conscious effort to notice the present moment through each of these senses. So, taking the moment to identify 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. If it's difficult to identify all of these senses at the same time, that is totally okay. Focusing on one sense can also be helpful. Another healthy coping strategy can be engaging in deep breathing. There are many different deep breathing techniques that can be helpful, but an example of one is box breathing. Students often find it helpful to air draw a box as they breathe in and out. So you can inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale it for 4 seconds, and then hold it again. It's a boxed breathing, and you can air box it out. It's also important to note that everyone copes in different ways, and if neither of these examples are helpful, here is a list of many other healthy strategies that your student can pick from.
We also wanted to mention just some other pointers about how to support your student. Offering safety through normal boundaries and routines. One-on-one time with your student is really important during this time. Being flexible with our expectations, modeling emotions, relieving kids of guilt if they have any, seeking outside resources, especially if you notice any of the worrisome behaviors, as mentioned before, honoring and remembering the person who died or passed away. If your student is in need of additional support, please do not hesitate to contact the social emotional team member at your school. If you're not sure who that social emotional expert or team member is, you can always call the office and they will be sure to connect you with them. We have also provided some other county resources here for your convenience. We would like to end with the poem, Grief is Like a River by Cynthia G. Kelly. We wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to watch our presentation on grief. Thank you so much.